They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine scalding hot, with a side of public humiliation and a garnish of poetic justice. I stared at my laptop screen in our kitchen, coffee growing cold in my favorite mug, the one that said, "World's Okayest Husband." Turns out, even that was giving me too much credit. The video file sat there like a digital bomb, just waiting for me to click it and blow up what remained of my 38-year-old life. "Daddy, can you help me with my math homework?" Sophie called from the living room. My 12-year-old daughter's voice snapped me back to reality. The reality where I was still a father, still had responsibilities, still had to pretend everything was fine while my world crumbled like a stale cookie. "Sure, sweetheart. Give me a minute." I closed the laptop without watching the video. I didn't need to see Melissa and her boss, Eric Dalton, going at it like teenagers in his corner office. The message was clear enough. She wanted me to know exactly what I was losing. Or maybe she thought I'd finally grow a backbone and file for divorce, making it easier for her to run off with Dallas's most arrogant tech CEO. Melissa had been working late for months. "Important client meetings," she'd say, adjusting her skirt in the hallway mirror. "Eric needs me to handle the Peterson account personally." I bet he did. The Peterson account probably had great benefits, like hotel rooms and champagne. "Nate, did you pick up Emma from soccer practice?" Melissa's voice carried from the garage. She was home early for once, probably to see if I'd opened her little gift. "Yeah, she's upstairs doing homework." I kept my voice steady, though inside I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train driven by my own stupidity. How long had I been the clueless husband? How many dinner parties had we attended where everyone knew except me? Melissa walked into the kitchen, still in her business suit, the expensive one I'd helped her pick out for impressing clients. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, makeup flawless. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine, not like a woman who'd been betraying her family for months. "You seem tense," she said, opening the refrigerator. "Rough day debugging code?" "I work in IT security for a mid-sized firm. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps our suburban Dallas home running. Unlike some people, I don't need to sleep my way to success." Something like that. I watched her pour herself a glass of wine. "How was your day? Any interesting meetings?" She smiled, the kind of smile that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made me nauseous. "Eric and I had a very productive session. We covered a lot of ground." The double meaning hung in the air like smoke. She was testing me, seeing if I'd taken the bait. Part of me wanted to confront her right there, throw the laptop on the counter and demand answers. But another part, the part that had learned patience from years of tracking down security breaches, told me to wait, to plan. "That's great, honey. I'm sure Eric appreciates your dedication." Melissa's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd expected anger, tears, maybe me storming out. Instead, I was giving her the same bland response I'd use for discussing the weather. "The girls need new school clothes," I continued, opening the mail. "Sophie's growing out of everything, and Emma's soccer cleats are falling apart." "Whatever. Handle it." Melissa took her wine and headed upstairs. "I have calls to make." More calls to Eric, no doubt, planning their next romantic rendezvous while I played single father downstairs. The old me would have felt hurt, maybe even cried a little. The new me, the one born the moment I saw that video file, felt something different, something colder. I helped Sophie with algebra and listened to Emma describe her soccer game. Normal dad stuff, the kind of thing Eric Dalton probably never did with his own kids. He was too busy playing CEO and seducing other men's wives. After tucking the girls into bed, I sat in my home office and opened the laptop again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I clicked the video file and watched my marriage die in high definition. Melissa was right about one thing. Eric was enthusiastic. The video showed them in what looked like a hotel room, probably the Marriott downtown, where Eric held his client dinners. They were so busy with each other, they never noticed the camera Melissa had set up. She'd filmed it specifically for me, a final insult wrapped in humiliation. But as I watched, something interesting caught my eye. In the background, partially visible on Eric's phone screen, were text messages. I paused the video and enhanced the image using software from work. The messages were from someone named C, short, worried texts about coming home late again and the kids asking questions. C had to be Camille, Eric's wife. I'd met her a few times at school events and company parties. Elegant, intelligent, always perfectly composed. She reminded me of those classic movie stars, Grace Kelly or Audrey Hepburn. The kind of woman who could make you forget your own name just by smiling. And apparently, she was just as clueless about her husband's extracurricular activities as I'd been. I spent the next hour researching Eric and Camille Dalton, social media, public records, news articles about Eric's company. The picture that emerged was fascinating. Eric was everything I wasn't: rich, powerful, connected. He drove a Range Rover that cost more than I made in a year and lived in a mansion in the most exclusive part of Dallas. But Camille was different. Her social media showed a woman who loved art, literature, and her 2 children. She volunteered at museums and organized charity events. In every photo with Eric, she looked polite but distant, like she was performing for the camera. "Nate?" Melissa's voice from the bedroom. "Are you coming to bed?" "In a minute." I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a moment. The old Nate would have gone upstairs, pretended everything was normal, maybe even tried to salvage his marriage. But the old Nate was dead, killed by a video file and his wife's cruelty. The new Nate had different plans. "You look like hell," my best friend Javier said, spotting me across the coffee shop. He taught gym at the local high school and had the annoying habit of being brutally honest. "Rough night?" "You could say that." I slid into the booth across from him. We'd been meeting for coffee every Saturday morning for 3 years, a tradition that started when both our marriages hit rough patches. His had recovered. Mine had apparently died and been buried without me getting the memo. "Melissa still working late?" Javier stirred his coffee and studied my face. "Man, you need to talk to her. This workaholic thing is killing you." If only it were that simple. I'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, planning my next move. Confronting Melissa directly would just lead to a messy divorce where she'd take half of everything and probably get custody of the girls. Eric would face no consequences. Guys like him never did. They just moved on to the next conquest while leaving wreckage behind. But what if there was another way? "Javi, what do you know about Eric Dalton?" "Your wife's boss, rich guy, big house, drives like he owns the road." Javier shrugged. "Why?" "Just curious. His wife ever come to school events?" "Camille?" "Yeah, she's at everything. PTA meetings, fundraisers, you name it. Nice lady, classy. Why the sudden interest in Dallas high society?" I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. Javier was loyal, but he was also a talker. If word got back to Melissa that I was asking questions about her boss, it would ruin everything. Thinking about switching jobs. Eric's company is hiring in IT security. "Bullshit." Javier leaned forward. "I've known you for 15 years, Nate. You're planning something. What's going on?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Taking girls shopping. Back tonight. Don't wait up." Shopping. Right. More likely she was spending the day with Eric while I played the dutiful husband at home. "I need to go," I told Javier. "Rain check on the rest of this conversation?" "Nate, whatever's going on, I'm fine, really." But I wasn't fine. I was angry, hurt, and for the first time in my marriage, I was thinking strategically instead of emotionally. I drove to the Dalton neighborhood, a collection of million-dollar homes behind gates and perfectly manicured lawns. Eric's house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a modern monstrosity of glass and steel that screamed, "Look how successful I am." 2 cars in the driveway, a silver Mercedes, and a blue Honda Civic. Camille's cars, according to my research. I parked across the street and waited. This was crazy, I knew that. Normal people don't stake out their wife's lover's house on Saturday morning. Normal people have honest conversations and work through their problems like adults. But normal people's wives don't film sex tapes as parting gifts. 20 minutes later, Camille emerged from the house with 2 kids, a boy about Emma's age and a girl slightly older. She was even more beautiful in person, wearing jeans and a simple sweater that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she moved with the kind of grace that comes from good breeding and expensive education. She loaded the kids into the Honda and drove off. I followed at a distance, feeling like a stalker, but unable to stop myself. She went to the soccer fields where Emma practiced, parking near the same spot I usually chose. This was my chance. I got out of my car and walked over as she was setting up a folding chair. The kids had already run off to join their teams. "Excuse me, aren't you Camille Dalton?" She looked up, startled but polite. "Yes? I'm Nate Carter. I think our kids go to the same school. My daughter Emma plays on the Wildcats." Recognition dawned in her eyes. "Oh yes, Emma Carter. She's a wonderful player. Very aggressive on the field. She gets that from her mother." The words came out before I could stop them, carrying more bitterness than I'd intended. Camille's expression shifted slightly. "Is everything all right, Mr. Carter?" "Call me Nate, and honestly, no, everything's not all right, but that's not your problem." We stood in awkward silence for a moment, watching our kids run around the field. Camille had the kind of poise that made me feel like a clumsy teenager, but there was something else in her eyes, a sadness that matched my own. "Your husband works with my wife," I said finally. "Melissa Carter from HR." "Oh." The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Yes, Eric mentions her occasionally." "I bet he does." Camille studied my face carefully. "Mr. Carter, Nate, I think perhaps we should change the subject." "Why? Because it's uncomfortable? Because we're both pretending not to know what's really going on?" She looked around nervously, making sure no other parents were within earshot. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know my wife filmed herself with your husband and sent me the video. I know they've been having an affair for months. I know you probably suspect something but don't have proof." I kept my voice low and calm, but each word hit like a hammer. "And I know we're both tired of being made fools of." Camille's composure cracked slightly. For just a moment, I saw raw pain flash across her features before she regained control. "Even if what you're saying is true, what exactly do you expect me to do about it?" "I expect you to be angry. I expect you to want them to pay for what they've done to us and our children." "Revenge?" She almost smiled. "Mr. Carter, I'm not some character in a soap opera. I'm a mother with responsibilities." "So am I. But that doesn't mean we have to let them walk all over us." The soccer game ended, and kids started running back toward their parents. Our conversation was over, but I could see the wheels turning in Camille's mind. "Think about it," I said, handing her a piece of paper with my phone number. "If you ever want to talk to someone who understands what you're going through." She took the paper without looking at it. "This is insane." "Yeah, it is. But so is pretending everything's fine while our spouses laugh at us behind our backs." I walked away before she could respond, but I felt her eyes on me as I reached my car. The seed was planted. Now I had to wait and see if it would grow. That evening, Melissa came home with shopping bags and a guilty smile. "The girls found some great clothes," she announced, though I noticed she was carrying bags from Victoria's Secret, not exactly Sophie and Emma's style. "Where are they?" I asked. "Oh, they wanted to have dinner at McDonald's, so I dropped them at Javier's house. His kids were going anyway." More lies. I'd texted Javier earlier. He was at his in-laws' house all day. The girls were probably with Eric somewhere, being treated like inconveniences while Mommy and Daddy played house. That was thoughtful of you. Melissa disappeared upstairs with her bags. An hour later, she emerged wearing a new dress that left little to the imagination. "I'm going out with the girls," she announced. "Stacy's birthday dinner. Don't wait up. Have fun." She paused at the door, clearly expecting more of a reaction. When I just nodded and returned to my book, she left with a frustrated sigh. My phone rang 10 minutes later. "Mr. Carter, this is Camille Dalton. I think we should talk." Camille suggested we meet at a small cafe in downtown Dallas, far from our neighborhood and the places where we might run into mutual acquaintances. I arrived first and chose a corner table where we could talk privately. She walked in exactly on time, wearing a black dress that was elegant without being flashy. Even nervous, she carried herself like royalty. I stood up as she approached, and she gave me a small, uncertain smile. "I wasn't sure you'd come," I admitted as she sat down. "I wasn't sure either. This feels very surreal." She ordered coffee from the waitress, her hands slightly shaking. "I keep thinking I'm making a terrible mistake." "The mistake was trusting them in the first place." Camille flinched. "You don't mince words, do you?" "I used to. I used to be the kind of guy who avoided conflict, who tried to see the best in everyone, but that guy got played for a fool." I leaned forward. "How long have you suspected?" "Months. Maybe longer." She stared into her coffee cup. "Eric started working late constantly, taking mysterious phone calls, buying new clothes. Classic signs, right? But when I asked about it, he made me feel paranoid and jealous. Gaslighting. It's manipulation 101. You seem to know a lot about this." "I've been doing research. Turns out there are patterns to this kind of behavior. Eric's following the cheating husband playbook perfectly." Camille laughed bitterly. "And here I thought I was married to an original." The waitress brought our drinks and left us alone. Camille took a sip of coffee and studied my face. "What exactly are you proposing, Nate?" "I'm proposing we stop being victims. I'm proposing we take control of the narrative instead of letting them write it for us." "That sounds like revenge. That sounds like justice." She was quiet for a long moment, weighing my words. "What did you have in mind?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the video Melissa had sent me. Camille's face went pale as she recognized the hotel room. "The Marriott downtown. Eric told me he was there for a client dinner last Tuesday." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I was home helping our son with his science project. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They think we're too weak or too stupid to fight back. Maybe they're right." Camille pushed the phone away. "Maybe I am too weak. Do you know what my life would look like if I divorced Eric? I'd get half his assets, sure, but I'd also become a social pariah. The wronged wife. The woman who couldn't keep her husband happy. My children would be caught in the middle of a custody battle. And if you do nothing? If I do nothing, I maintain my dignity and my lifestyle while slowly dying inside." She met my eyes. "Not much of a choice, is it? There's a third option." "Which is?" "We make them regret ever meeting each other." I outlined my plan over the next hour. It wasn't about violence or illegal activity. It was about social warfare. Eric and Melissa thrived on their reputations, their status, their sense of superiority. What if we took that away from them? "You want us to fake an affair?" Camille looked skeptical. "How would that help anything?" Think about it. Eric's ego is tied up in being the alpha male, the guy who steals other men's wives. How would he feel if his own wife was supposedly doing the same thing? And Melissa, she thinks she's won some kind of prize. What happens when she realizes her prize comes with baggage? It's petty. It's strategic. We're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to level the playing field. Right now, they hold all the cards. They're having their fun while we sit at home playing the devoted spouses. I say we change the game. Camille was quiet for several minutes, clearly torn between her natural dignity and her desire for payback. How would it work? Simple. We start spending time together publicly. Coffee dates, lunch meetings, maybe attend a few events as each other's friends. Let people talk. Let rumors spread. Eric and Melissa will hear about it, and suddenly they'll be the ones feeling jealous and insecure. And then what? Then we see how they like being on the other side of betrayal. Camille finished her coffee and sat back in her chair. This is crazy, Nate. We barely know each other. We know the most important thing. We're both tired of being treated like fools. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. Eric texted me an hour ago, another late night at the office, important merger discussions. Melissa's at Stacy's birthday party, except Stacy's birthday was last month. God, they're not even creative liars. Camille's expression hardened. Fine, I'm in, but I have conditions. Name them. First, nothing happens that could hurt our children. They don't deserve to pay for their parents' mistakes. Agreed. Second, if this gets out of hand, we stop immediately. I won't destroy my family just to get back at Eric. Fair enough. Third, this stays between us. No involving friends, no bringing other people into our drama. Done. I extended my hand across the table. Partners in crime? She shook it, her grip firm and warm. Partners in crime. God help us both. We spent another hour planning our first public appearance. The country club where Eric played golf was hosting a charity auction next weekend. Both our spouses would be there, along with most of Dallas's social elite. I'll need a new dress, Camille said, making notes on her phone. Something that will get attention. I lay in bed that night and stared at the ceiling, but the feeling in my chest wasn't the usual ache anymore. It wasn't the dull weight of being tricked inside your own life, or the sick loop of replaying old conversations and hearing the lies underneath them. It was something sharper, cleaner, almost energizing, like the moment before a storm breaks when the air gets charged and you can taste electricity in your mouth. For weeks, I'd been living like a man waiting to be sentenced, watching my marriage turn into a story Melissa was writing without me. And now, for the first time, I felt like I'd picked up a pen. In the morning, Melissa moved through the house with a forced calm, like she was trying to reset everything to normal by sheer routine. She made coffee, she checked her phone too often, she wore one of those professional outfits that always looked perfect but never looked comfortable. She talked about her day like it was just another day, like there wasn't a charity auction next weekend that she was clearly nervous about, and like there wasn't a hidden thread connecting her to Eric that she thought I couldn't see. I played along. I smiled when she smiled. I asked light questions. I stayed inside the role she had assigned me, the quiet, predictable husband who didn't make trouble, who didn't notice patterns, who didn't have the imagination to connect dots. It was almost insulting how easy she thought it would be to keep me there. When she left, I didn't collapse into anger. I didn't pace the kitchen. I sat at my desk, opened my notebook, and wrote one sentence across the top of a fresh page in block letters. Charity auction. Saturday. Then I started building the event like a blueprint. Time, place, guest list, seating layout if I could find it, the sponsors, the donors, the kinds of people who'd be there, the kind of cameras that might be present. I looked up past photos from similar auctions, searched for tag patterns, and read the committee's public posts, because charities love documenting their own importance. That meant useful information was always hiding in plain sight. It wasn't stalking, it wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Camille. Eric asked who the friend is, her text read. I said it's someone from my book club. He laughed like it was impossible I could have a book club. I stared at the message and felt a small, cold satisfaction. That laughter wasn't confidence. It was complacency. Men like Eric lived in a world where women were accessories, and accessories didn't get ideas of their own. I replied, "Perfect. Let him underestimate you. It makes people sloppy." Her response came quickly. "I'm buying a dress, not for him, for me." I almost smiled because that was the first real weapon Camille could carry into that room. Not the dress itself, but the meaning behind it. A woman who stops dressing for approval and starts dressing for herself is a woman who is no longer easy to control. The next few days passed like quiet rehearsal. Melissa became extra careful, the way people do when they sense a shift but can't name it. She was a little nicer than usual, a little more attentive, a little more interested in what I was doing. She asked about my week twice in one day, which would have felt sweet in a different life, but now it felt like surveillance disguised as affection. On Thursday night, she brought up the auction casually while standing at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables like she was in a cooking show. "Do you remember the charity auction is Saturday?" she asked, too light, too smooth. "I remember you mentioned it," I said, keeping my tone even. "Big event." "It's important," she replied. "A lot of networking. Good for the firm." "Sounds thrilling," I said, and she gave a small laugh that didn't sound natural. "You could come," she offered. And it was the kind of offer you make when you know the other person won't accept, when you want credit for inviting them without the risk of them actually showing up. I looked up and met her eyes long enough to make her hold the smile. "Maybe," I said. The knife paused for half a second. "Really?" "Why not?" I said, shrugging. "It might be nice thinking of seeing you in your element." Melissa blinked, and I saw it in her expression, the quick calculation, the immediate fear wrapped in polite surprise. "Well," she said, recovering fast, "it's pretty formal. Not exactly your scene." "Maybe I need a new attitude," I said mildly, echoing the line that had become a private anthem for me and Camille. The old me would have been too intimidated to walk into that place. Melissa forced a smile again, but it was thinner now. "We'll see," she said quickly. "It's a long night." That night, after she went to bed, I called Camille. We didn't talk like people planning revenge. We talked like people planning survival. "Are you nervous?" I asked. "I'm terrified," Camille admitted. Then her voice shifted, and I could hear the smile in it. "Which is how I know I'm doing something that matters." "Good," I said. "Nervous is honest. But remember, we're not going in to explode. We're going in to observe, to control the room, to make them feel the pressure without giving them anything to twist against us." "Like a performance," she said. "Exactly," I replied. "They've been performing for months. We're just taking the stage back." Saturday arrived with a strange calm. I woke up early, went for a run, and let the cold air burn the fog out of my head. When I came home, Melissa was in the bedroom getting ready, standing in front of the mirror with that careful intensity she always had before events. She had her hair pinned, makeup perfect, a dress laid out on the bed that looked expensive and deliberate. "You're up early," she said, watching me in the mirror. "Couldn't sleep," I lied. She studied me. "Are you coming tonight?" I pretended to think about it, then shook my head. "No," I said. "I think you should go enjoy yourself. I'll keep the house quiet." Relief flashed across her face before she could hide it. "That's probably best," she said too quickly. "It's really just work." "Sure," I said, and kissed her cheek with the kind of gentle affection that used to be real, the kind that now felt like a mask I wore to keep her comfortable. "Have fun." She left with a perfume trail and a tight smile, and the second her car pulled out, my phone buzzed. "Camille." "I'm outside, wearing my new attitude." I drove to meet her, and when she stepped into my car, I almost didn't recognize her. Not because she looked dramatically different, but because she looked awake. Her posture was straighter, her eyes sharper, her expression calmer. She wasn't dressed to impress Eric or anyone else. She was dressed like a woman reminding herself that she existed. "Okay," she said, exhaling slowly. "Let's go." The venue was a restored downtown hall with tall windows and warm lighting, the kind of place where wealthy people liked to pretend they were generous because they bid on silent auction baskets. The valet stand was busy. People moved like they belonged, laughing and greeting each other by first name. Camille and I walked in together, not rushing, not hiding, not acting like we were sneaking into something we didn't deserve. Her hand brushed my arm lightly, and she whispered, "If I panic, don't let me run." "I won't," I said. "Just look at me. If you feel overwhelmed, we step aside and breathe. That's it." Inside, the air was thick with perfume and money. There were round tables, a stage with a microphone, display boards with donor names, and clusters of people who looked like they'd rehearsed their smiles. And then I saw them. Melissa near the bar, talking to a group of donors, her laugh slightly too bright. Eric across the room, confident, leaning in close to a woman in a red dress. And then, like gravity pulling them together, Melissa and Eric's eyes found each other, and the look that passed between them was so familiar it made my stomach tighten. It wasn't casual, it wasn't friendly. It was intimate, practiced, loaded. Camille saw it too. I felt her body stiffen beside me. "Breathe," I murmured. She inhaled slowly, then exhaled, and her shoulders lowered by a fraction. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I can do this." We didn't march up to them. We didn't confront anyone. We simply entered the room like we belonged there because we did, and that alone began to shift the atmosphere. Eric noticed Camille almost immediately, his expression flickering with surprise, then irritation, then the forced smile he used for public spaces. Melissa noticed me a second later, and her face went still, like someone seeing a ghost. I gave her the calmest nod in the world, the nod of a man who wasn't supposed to be here, but was anyway. Camille leaned toward me and spoke through a smile, her voice barely audible. "Funny," she said, "how they never expect us to have lives of our own." I looked at the room, at the lights, at the cameras, at the people who loved gossip more than truth. Then I looked at Eric again and felt the quiet thrill of Phase 2 beginning exactly on schedule. "Get ready," I whispered back, "for the performance of your life." Camille's smile widened, and for the first time, it wasn't fear. "I was born ready," she said. And as we stepped deeper into the crowd, I realized something that made my chest feel almost light. For the first time since discovering Melissa's betrayal, I wasn't waiting to see what she would do next. I was setting the stage. The Dallas Country Club charity auction was exactly what I'd expected. A gathering of wealthy people trying to outdo each other's generosity while networking and gossiping. I felt completely out of place in my rented tuxedo, but I was determined not to let it show. Camille arrived 20 minutes after me, and the sight of her took my breath away. She wore a red dress that was sophisticated yet stunning, her hair styled in an elegant updo. Every head turned as she walked through the ballroom, but she only had eyes for me. "You clean up well," she said, taking my arm. "You look incredible. Eric's going to swallow his tongue." "That's the idea." She scanned the room until she spotted our targets. "There they are by the bar. Eric's wearing his 'I own this room' expression, and your wife looks like she stepped out of a magazine." Melissa did look beautiful in a black cocktail dress, laughing at something Eric was saying. They stood close together, his hand occasionally touching her back, in a gesture that was just intimate enough to be noticed by anyone paying attention. "Ready for this?" I asked Camille. "Let's give them a show they'll never forget." We made our entrance slowly, stopping to chat with other guests and making sure we were seen together. I introduced Camille as my dear friend to several people I recognized from school events, while she did the same with her social circle. The whispers started almost immediately. "Isn't that Eric Dalton's wife? Who's the man she's with? They seem very close." By the time we reached the bar, half the room was watching us. Eric spotted us first, his face cycling through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been jealousy. Melissa turned to see what had captured his attention, and her expression went from curious to furious in seconds. "Nate?" She approached us with a forced smile. "What a surprise to see you here." Camille invited me. I thought it would be fun to support a good cause. I kept my arm around Camille's waist, noting how Eric's jaw tightened. "You remember Camille Dalton, don't you? Eric's wife?" "Of course. Hello, Camille." Melissa's voice could have frozen water. "I didn't know you and my husband were friends." "We've gotten quite close recently," Camille replied smoothly. "Nate's been such wonderful company, so attentive, so present." The word present hit like a slap. Eric flushed red, while Melissa's smile became razor sharp. "How nice. Eric and I were just discussing his upcoming business trip to Chicago, another one of those intensive work sessions." "Oh, those can be so demanding," I said innocently. "All those late nights, all that collaboration. I'm sure it's exhausting." Eric finally found his voice. "Carter, right? You work in IT?" "Security systems. I specialize in finding things people try to hide." I met his gaze steadily. "It's amazing what people leave lying around when they think no one's watching." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Other guests were starting to stare openly now, sensing drama but not understanding the undercurrents. "Well," Melissa said through gritted teeth, "we should let you two get back to your evening. Come on, Eric. I want to show you the auction items." They walked away, but not before Eric shot me a look that promised future confrontation. Camille and I watched them go, then burst into quiet laughter. "Did you see his face?" she whispered. "I thought he was going to challenge you to a duel." "And Melissa looked like she wanted to throw her drink at you. This is working better than I hoped." They're rattled. We spent the rest of the evening playing our parts perfectly. I bid on several auction items, making sure everyone knew I could afford to be generous. Camille introduced me to her friends as her escort, letting them draw their own conclusions. We danced twice, holding each other just close enough to fuel speculation. By the time the evening ended, we'd accomplished our goal. The gossip mill was in full swing, and Eric and Melissa had spent the entire night watching us, instead of enjoying each other's company. "Phase 2 complete," I told Camille as we walked to our cars. "I almost feel sorry for them. Almost." She paused at her Mercedes. "Eric's going to interrogate me the entire drive home." "What will you tell him?" "The truth, that you're a friend who's been helping me through a difficult time in my marriage." She smiled wickedly. "He'll hate that he can't argue with it." I drove home feeling victorious, but the feeling didn't last long. Melissa was waiting in the living room, still in her auction dress, but with her arms crossed and fire in her eyes. "What the hell was that tonight?" "What was what?" I sat down calmly, refusing to match her anger. "Don't play dumb with me, Nate. You showed up at the country club with Eric's wife, acting like you were on some kind of date. Camille's a friend. She invited me to support charity. I thought you'd be proud of me for getting involved in the community." "Bullshit. You were trying to embarrass me." "Why would spending time with a friend embarrass you, unless you have some reason to feel guilty about something?" Melissa's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're acting awfully defensive for someone who was just having dinner with coworkers." "I was at a charity auction with my boss and other colleagues. It's called networking." "Right? And I was at the same charity auction with a friend. Funny how that works out." She stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out what I knew and what I was planning. The old Nate would have crumbled under that stare, would have apologized and tried to smooth things over. The new Nate just smiled. "I'm going to bed," she finally said. "We'll discuss this tomorrow." "Nothing to discuss. I had a nice evening with a friend." End of story. After she went upstairs, I checked my phone. 3 text messages from Camille. "Eric's furious, demanding to know how long we've been seeing each other. I told him we've been talking for a few weeks, that you understand what I'm going through. He's sleeping in the guest room tonight. Mission accomplished." I texted back. "Melissa's suspicious, but can't figure out what to accuse me of. Same result here. What's next?" "Now we let them stew for a while, let their imaginations run wild. This is more fun than I expected. Just wait. We're getting started. The next few days were deliciously tense. Melissa tried to act normal, but I caught her going through my phone, checking my browser history, and asking casual questions about my whereabouts. Eric, according to Camille's reports, was equally paranoid. Wednesday evening, I got the call I'd been expecting. "We need to talk." Eric's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Meet me at Murphy's bar in 20 minutes. Murphy's was a dive bar downtown, the kind of place where rich executives went when they wanted to have conversations they couldn't have at the country club. I arrived to find Eric already there, nursing a whiskey and looking like he wanted to punch someone. "Sit down, Carter." I ordered a beer and waited for him to make his move. "I don't know what game you think you're playing," he began, "but it ends now." "I'm not playing any games, I'm just living my life." "Bullshit. You're trying to use my wife to get back at me for something." "Get back at you for what? What could you possibly have done to me?" Eric's face went red. He knew exactly what he'd done, but he couldn't say it without admitting to the affair. "Stay away from Camille. That's not your decision to make. Or mine, for that matter. Camille's a grown woman who can choose her own friends. She's my wife. Then maybe you should start acting like a husband instead of—" I let the sentence hang in the air. Instead of what? Instead of taking her for granted. Instead of working late every night. Instead of treating her like a piece of furniture. Eric leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You don't know anything about my marriage." "I know more than you think." We stared at each other across the table, two men playing a game where only one of us knew all the rules. Eric was used to intimidating people with his wealth and position, but I had something he didn't, the moral high ground, and nothing left to lose. "This is your only warning," he said finally. "Stay away from my family." "Or what?" "Or you'll find out why I'm successful and you're not." I finished my beer and stood up. "Thanks for the drink, Eric. Give my regards to your wife. Both of them." I walked out before he could respond, leaving him sitting there with his impotent rage and his guilty conscience. The war was officially on. The next phase of our plan required perfect timing and nerves of steel. Camille and I had been meeting regularly for coffee, always in public places where we were sure to be seen. The gossip network in Dallas was better than any intelligence agency. Within days, everyone in our social circle knew that Eric Dalton's wife was spending time with some mysterious man. "Stacy cornered me at the grocery store yesterday," Melissa announced over breakfast, trying to sound casual. "She said she saw you having lunch with someone at that new cafe on Maple Street. Probably Camille. We've been meeting there regularly." I didn't look up from my newspaper, but I could feel Melissa's stare burning into me. "Why? Why what? Why are you meeting with Eric's wife? She's going through a rough patch in her marriage. I'm a good listener." I finally looked at Melissa, noting the panic in her eyes. "You don't mind, do you? I mean, it's not like we're doing anything wrong. It's just strange. You've never been interested in making new friends before." "Maybe I'm changing. Maybe I'm tired of being predictable." That afternoon, I got a text from Camille. "Emergency coffee meeting. Something's happened." I found her at our usual cafe, but instead of her normal composed self, she looked shaken and angry. "Eric hired a private investigator," she said without preamble. "I found the paperwork in his desk drawer this morning." "To follow us?" "To follow me. He wants proof that I'm having an affair so he can divorce me without losing half his assets." She laughed bitterly. "The irony is incredible. This was actually perfect for our plan, but I could see that Camille was genuinely hurt by her husband's suspicion and hypocrisy." "What did the investigator find?" "Nothing, obviously, since we're not actually having an affair. But Eric's convinced something's going on. He confronted me last night, accused me of making a fool of him in front of the whole city." "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth, that you're a friend who understands what it's like to feel neglected by a spouse. That seemed to make him even angrier. I leaned back in my chair, thinking, this could work in our favor. How? Eric's getting desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. And if he's so convinced we're having an affair, maybe it's time to give him some real evidence to worry about. Camille raised an eyebrow. What kind of evidence? The kind that will make him realize how it feels to be betrayed. That evening, I put the next part of our plan into motion. I called Camille and made sure to have the conversation where Melissa could overhear. Hey, it's me. Yes, I can talk. Tonight? I don't know, that seems risky. Okay, but we have to be careful. The Marriott downtown? That's pretty public. Fine, but just for drinks. I'll see you at 8. I hung up and pretended to notice Melissa standing in the doorway. Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. Who was that? Her voice was carefully controlled, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Camille. She's having a crisis with Eric and needs someone to talk to. At the Marriott? They have a nice bar, quiet, good for conversation. I grabbed my keys. Don't wait up. These marriage counseling sessions can run late. Melissa's face went white. The Marriott was where she and Eric had their regular rendezvous. The idea of me meeting Camille at the same hotel was clearly driving her crazy. Nate, wait. Maybe this isn't such a good idea. Why not? It's just, people might get the wrong impression. What people? And what impression would that be? She couldn't answer without revealing her own guilt, so she just stood there looking frustrated and helpless. I met Camille at the Marriott bar as planned. She looked stunning in a blue dress that highlighted her eyes, and I made sure we were seated at a prominent table where anyone entering the bar would see us immediately. This feels dangerous, she said, accepting a glass of wine. That's the point. Eric's investigator is probably taking pictures right now. And your wife? Probably having a panic attack at home, wondering if I'm doing to her what she's been doing to me. We spent 2 hours at the bar, talking, laughing, and playing the part of two people falling in love. It wasn't entirely an act. Camille was intelligent, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth, despite her wealthy background. Under different circumstances, I could see myself genuinely caring for her. We should probably leave, she said finally. Separately, I assume. Actually, let's leave together. Really give them something to think about. We walked out of the hotel together, and I kissed her cheek goodbye in full view of the lobby security cameras. It was innocent enough to be defensible, but intimate enough to fuel speculation. See you tomorrow? I asked, loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. I'm looking forward to it, she replied with a smile that could have melted ice. I drove home to find Melissa pacing in the living room like a caged animal. How was your evening? She asked with forced casualness. Enlightening. Camille's marriage is in worse shape than I thought. Eric's been neglecting her terribly. That's too bad. It is. She deserves so much better than a husband who takes her for granted. I looked directly at Melissa. Don't you think wives deserve better than that? Of course, but what? Nothing. I'm going to bed. The next morning brought the confrontation I'd been expecting. My phone rang at 7 a.m. Eric, and he was furious. You son of a bitch, I know what you're doing. Good morning to you too, Eric. What am I doing? You're trying to steal my wife. I'm being a friend to someone who needs one. If that threatens you, maybe you should ask yourself why. I want you to stay away from her. Again, that's not your decision to make. Camille's a grown woman. I'll destroy you, Carter. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. With what? Being kind to your neglected wife? Good luck with that. Eric hung up, but I knew this wasn't over. Rich, powerful men like him didn't handle humiliation well, and I'd been systematically dismantling his ego for weeks. That afternoon, Camille called with an update. Eric's lost his mind, she reported. He's demanding I stop seeing you, threatening to cut off my credit cards, talking about sending the kids to boarding school. How are you handling it? I told him I'd consider his demands when he starts treating me like a wife instead of a possession. There was steel in her voice now. I also told him that if he wants to discuss fidelity, we should start with his own behavior. How did he react to that? He went very quiet, then left for the office. I think he's starting to realize that I know more than he thought. Good. Let him sweat. But Eric wasn't content to just sweat. That evening, I got a call from my boss. Nate, we need to talk. My office, first thing tomorrow morning. What's this about? Just be there. I knew before I walked into the office that Eric had made good on his threat. My boss, Jim Morrison, looked uncomfortable as he gestured for me to sit down. I got a call yesterday from Eric Dalton's company. They're claiming you've been harassing his wife. That's ridiculous. Camille and I are friends. They say you've been stalking her, showing up at places where she goes, making unwanted advances. Complete lies. Camille can verify that. They also say you've been using company resources to spy on their business operations. That was a more serious accusation, and we both knew it. I hadn't used company resources for anything related to Eric or Camille, but proving that might be difficult if Eric had planted false evidence. Jim, you've known me for 5 years. Do you really think I'm capable of stalking someone? No, but Eric Dalton has a lot of influence in this city. If he wants to make trouble for you, then I guess I'll have to make trouble for him. I left the office knowing my job was in jeopardy, but instead of feeling defeated, I felt energized. Eric was escalating the conflict, which meant our plan was working. He was scared, desperate, and making the kind of mistakes that would ultimately destroy him. It was time for the final phase of our revenge. The charity gala at the Dallas Museum of Art was the social event of the season. 500 of the city's most influential people gathered to celebrate philanthropy and see who could outspend whom. Eric and Melissa would be there, of course, playing the part of successful power couple while secretly carrying on their affair. Camille and I had planned our grand finale carefully. We'd spent weeks building up the rumors, letting people's imaginations run wild about our relationship. Tonight, we were going to give them something that would make Eric and Melissa's affair look like a minor indiscretion. Are you sure about this? Camille asked as we met in the museum parking lot. She looked breathtaking in a silver gown that probably cost more than my car, but I could see the nervousness in her eyes. Having second thoughts? Not about making them pay, but what we're about to do, there's no taking it back. There was no taking back what they did to us either. She nodded, steeling herself. Then let's finish this. The gala was in full swing when we arrived. I'd rented the most expensive tuxedo I could find and borrowed my brother's Rolex. Tonight, I needed to look like I belonged in Camille's world. We made our entrance together, her hand on my arm, both of us radiating confidence. The reaction was immediate. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as people turned to stare. Camille Dalton, one of Dallas society's most respected women, was making a very public statement about her relationship status. "There's Eric," she murmured, nodding toward the bar where her husband stood with a group of business associates. "He looks like he's about to have a stroke." Eric's face had gone purple when he spotted us. He excused himself from his group and started walking in our direction, but before he could reach us, we were intercepted by the museum director. "Mrs. Dalton, how wonderful to see you, and you must be the gentleman we've heard so much about." "This is Nate Carter," Camille said smoothly. "He's been such a wonderful support during this difficult time in my life." The director's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Oh? I hope everything's all right. Just some marital challenges. Nothing that can't be overcome with the right guidance." She squeezed my arm meaningfully. We moved through the crowd like visiting royalty, stopping to chat with various social luminaries. Camille introduced me as her dear friend and closest confidant, while I played the part of the devoted companion who hung on her every word. "Where's Melissa?" Camille asked during a quiet moment. I scanned the room until I spotted my wife near the silent auction tables, wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She was talking to Eric, both of them shooting daggers in our direction. "Over there, plotting our demise with your husband." "Good. Let them plot. They're about to get a show they'll never forget." The evening's program included a series of speeches from major donors and community leaders. Eric was scheduled to speak about his company's charitable contributions, a perfect opportunity for maximum impact. As Eric took the stage, Camille and I positioned ourselves near the front of the audience, where we'd be clearly visible. I put my arm around her waist, and she leaned into me like a woman in love. Eric began his speech about corporate responsibility and giving back to the community, but his eyes kept drifting to us. His voice wavered slightly as he talked about the importance of integrity in both business and personal relationships. That's when Camille made her move. She turned to me and whispered something in my ear, loud enough for the people around us to hear. "I can't wait any longer, darling. I want everyone to know how I feel about you." Then she kissed me. It wasn't a friendly peck on the cheek or a casual gesture between friends. It was a full, passionate kiss that left no doubt about the nature of our relationship. The audience gasped, cameras flashed, and Eric's speech came to a stuttering halt as he watched his wife publicly declare her feelings for another man. When we finally broke apart, Camille looked directly at Eric and smiled. "I love you, Nate Carter," she said, in a voice that carried across the silent ballroom. "I love you too," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room erupted. People were whispering, pointing, taking pictures with their phones. Eric stood frozen at the podium, his face cycling through shock, rage, and humiliation. Melissa pushed through the crowd toward us, her face twisted with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed when she reached us. "I'm being honest about my feelings," I replied calmly. "Something you might want to try sometime." "This is insane. You're both married." "Yes, we are, to people who don't appreciate what they have." Camille's voice was ice cold. "People who think they can betray their spouses without consequences." Melissa's eyes widened as she realized we knew about the affair. "Nate, we need to talk. Privately." "I think we're past private conversations, don't you? After all, you made your feelings pretty clear in that video you sent me." Several people nearby heard the word video and leaned in closer. Melissa's face went white. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You and Eric have been having an affair for months. You filmed yourselves together and sent me the video to make sure I knew exactly what you thought of our marriage." My voice carried across the crowd, and more people were turning to listen. "Well, message received." Eric finally found his voice and his legs. He stumbled off the stage and pushed through the crowd toward us, his face red with rage. "Camille, what the hell? Hello, darling." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Enjoying the party?" "I certainly am." "We're leaving. Now." "No, we're not. I'm having a wonderful time with my boyfriend." The word boyfriend hit Eric like a physical blow. He grabbed Camille's arm, but I stepped between them. "Don't touch her. She's my wife." "Then you should have treated her like one instead of cheating on her with mine." The crowd around us had grown larger, and I could see people recording everything on their phones. By tomorrow, this would be all over social media and the Dallas gossip circuit. "You son of a bitch," Eric snarled. "I'll destroy you for this." "You already tried that. Got me fired, remember? Spread lies about me stalking your wife." "But here's the thing, Eric. When you're fighting someone who has nothing left to lose, you better make sure you finish the job." I pulled out my phone and opened the video file Melissa had sent me weeks ago. Should we show everyone what real betrayal looks like? I held up the phone so the crowd could see the frozen image of Eric and Melissa in their hotel room embrace. "I think your shareholders might find this interesting, and your wife's employer, and your children's school." Eric's face went from red to gray. "You wouldn't." "Try me." Melissa grabbed my arm. "Nate, please, think about the girls. Think about our family." I did think about our family, every night while you were with him, every time you lied to me about working late, every time you made me feel like I was going crazy for suspecting what everyone else already knew. I shook off her grip. You want to talk about our family? Let's talk about how you were planning to leave me for a married man. Let's talk about how you sent me a sex tape as a going-away present. The crowd was eating up every word. This was better than any reality TV show. Real drama involving people they actually knew. Please, Melissa whispered. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. No, you made a choice, multiple choices, and now you get to live with the consequences. I turned to address the crowd that had gathered around us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make an announcement. My wife Melissa has been having an affair with Eric Dalton for the past 6 months. They've been meeting at the Marriott downtown every Tuesday and Thursday, charging their romantic dinners to his company expense account. Melissa even filmed their encounters and sent me the videos to make sure I knew I was being replaced. The crowd gasped and murmured. Phones were recording everything, and I knew this would be viral within hours. But I want to thank them, I continued, because their betrayal led me to the love of my life. I took Camille's hand and raised it to my lips. Camille and I have found something real together, something based on honesty and mutual respect, something neither of us had in our marriages. Camille stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. Eric, I want a divorce. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. And Nate? She turned to me with tears in her eyes. I meant what I said. I do love you. I love you too. We kissed again, sealing our public declaration, while Eric and Melissa stood there looking like their world had just ended. Which, in many ways, it had. Security finally arrived to break up the crowd, but the damage was done. Eric and Melissa's affair was now public knowledge, their reputations destroyed, their social standing obliterated. They'd wanted to humiliate us with their betrayal. Instead, they'd handed us the weapons for their own destruction. As Camille and I left the museum together, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't experienced in years. The old Nate, the one who avoided conflict and tried to please everyone, was gone forever. In his place was a man who understood that sometimes the only way to win is to change the rules of the game. No regrets? I asked Camille as we walked to our cars. None whatsoever, you? Just one. What's that? I wish I'd met you before we both wasted years on people who didn't deserve us. She smiled, the first genuinely happy expression I'd seen from her since the day we met. Well, we've got the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. 6 months later, our divorces were final. Eric lost half his assets and his reputation, while his company's board forced him to resign after the affair became public. Melissa lost her job, her social standing, and custody of our daughters when the court decided her moral fitness was questionable. Camille and I were married in a small ceremony attended only by our children and closest friends. We bought a house together. Nothing as grand as the Dalton mansion, but it was ours, built on honesty instead of lies. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just confronted Melissa directly, if I'd taken the traditional path of angry accusations and bitter divorce proceedings. But then I look at Camille, see the happiness in her eyes, and I know we chose the right path. They wanted to destroy us with their betrayal. Instead, they gave us exactly what we needed, each other.